How's it going, everybody? This is Patrick Nissen with Coolest Homes. I've got a special guest today. This is Michael Bellings here with us. He's one of the top agents in San Francisco. In fact, he was the #1 buyer's agent in 2019 and 2020 in the San Francisco area. We are very lucky to have him. He's a friend of mine. Michael, how's it going, man?
It's going well. It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, man, it's been a while since I've seen your face, so it's good to finally catch up. He's also in his new home that he just purchased, so Mazel Tov on that. That's a great addition to what this is your second property.
Yep, second property, and I practice what I preach. Stepping stones to your next biggest and better property, and practicing what I preach right now, and getting my Zoom backdrop all handled. This is my first Zoom call here, so you get the inaugural video here.
Yeah, well, it's a privilege to pop that cherry. Let's just dive right into it, man. So, my first question to you is just for people who don't know you, just give like a very concise, brief intro about yourself and how you got into real estate.
Yeah, so I am a third generation realtor. My grandma actually used to sell real estate in New Jersey. She was part of the $1 Million Club. She'd sell a total of $1 million in a year, and that was like busting through the ceiling. It was huge for a woman at the time to be a top realtor then. And then my dad's been a realtor here for about 40 years. So I'm a third generation realtor, born and raised in San Francisco. And my brother and I started our team about 9 years ago now. Started at Vanguard Properties for about 6 years, quickly became the youngest top producers in history there. Then I became a 30 under 30 realtor in USA, which was a huge honor for me. And since then, we've just kind of shot out of a cannon. And last year we did over 100 million in sales and over almost 400 million in lifetime sales for our team. And it's my brother Aaron and I, and then we have two other agents, Tyler Mendy and Eric Jansen, on our team. And we cover the San Francisco market, so 7x7. And we're at Compass now for the last 3 years at Compass.
And is Aaron your older brother or younger brother?
He loves when people ask that because he's the older brother. I guess I'm looking older with the glasses and beard these days, but he's older. We're the Bellings Brothers team at Compass. So we make a good team because I handle a lot of the marketing and creative, while Aaron has a extensive background in finance and is more the finance brain. So we actually make a good team, especially when it comes to sellers, because marketing strategy and pricing strategy are what you want to tackle when selling a home. So Aaron and I make a great tag team in that sense.
Great. And so what was the year that you jumped into the market? Like you got licensed, you were ready to go. When was the first year you started?
2012/2013.
And so tell me what the market in San Francisco looked like at that time.
Yeah, it was just, we had the 0809 great economic recession, and things were just coming back in that 2011, 2012. When I like fully was in was 2013, and the market was getting pretty hot. It was starting that kind of upswing on the bell curve statistically when you're looking at home values and prices in the Bay Area. Yet, it's kind of wild looking back right now because what I preach in San Francisco is, over time you can throw a dart at the map and your property will be worth more. Sure, there'll be times of sideways and downness, but overall it'll be a stepladder effect. And it's funny thinking back to that 2013 market because I'm out here in the Richmond district now, and the Sunset district is my neighbor here. And we were selling homes for 600,000 or 700,000, and that was unbelievably expensive. And people couldn't believe how expensive it was. And now you can't get a property in the Sunset for less than really 1.2 or 1.3 at a starting point. So it just kind of gives you an idea of, even in 8 or 9 short years, property values have basically doubled in this area. And the market was hot, but it was relative. I don't think it was even close to kind of the strength that we're feeling now.
Totally. And so from the outside perspective, it seems like sort of the conclusion as to why these prices went up so much was just the tech industry coming into prominence. Is it as simple as that? Are there other factors involved as far as the exponential growth of that market?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Definitely powered by tech. I mean, that's the #1 factor, I would say. But it's funny. I mean, even before me and your time, like my dad's been selling here my whole life. And, when people call me and they say, oh, the market's so expensive, I can't break in, there's not enough supply. It's hard to get a job. The San Francisco market's so small, there's no inventory. And my dad, it's been that way since the 60s and 70s. It's hyper focused now because of social media, because we have these videos, because we can talk about them more. But even when my parents were here in the 50s or 60s, they they say these same factors were creating a pretty strong market in the city. What really drives our market here is we're only 7 by 7 miles. That is tiny. We're like the smallest big city in the country that I can think of for being an international metropolitan market. We're 49 square miles. We're surrounded by water, so you can't build out anymore. You can't build more housing. And we have height limits here, so you can't really build up except for a small segment in the south of Market neighborhoods, called Soma or the downtown markets. That's where you can build up, and the height limits don't exist like they do on the north end of the city. So if you think about it, once tech really blew up in Silicon Valley, you have all these people moving in and they don't want to live in Silicon Valley, right? It closes down at 6 o'clock. There's no fun bars and restaurants. It's really suburban, kind of where me and your parents are, Patrick, and, the people that are our age that want to have fun and, work at Google and Uber, they want to live in San Francisco and work in Silicon Valley. So it really created this frenzy of, Silicon Valley was blowing up, the city was blowing up. People wanted to be here though. And again, we just really have no land or no properties. So it creates this constant supply and demand constraint basically in San Francisco. And what I attribute a lot of this to was Mayor Ed Lee, rest in peace, our former mayor. He gave tax breaks to the tech companies to bring their headquarters to the city. It was a huge deal. He basically went to Uber, Twitter, Google, a lot of these companies and said, hey, I'm going to give you huge tax breaks. Put your headquarters in the mid-market corridor of San Francisco. And that drove a lot of these tech companies to move their offices here. And that's what really created this explosion.
Got it. And so, you started around 2012, 2013. Take me to 2019 and tell me, at that point, comparatively to your experience just starting out, what had become, what had happened to the market? What did you start seeing?
Yeah, 2019 was a pretty wild year. I mean, it was the last crazy year we had before COVID hit. And, the story of our market was really multiple offers, no contingencies in any offer, well over the asking price by depends where the property's listed, but significantly high percentages over the asking price. And really, what started to happen kind of in that 2016, 2017, 2018, and then 2019, it hit with a bang, was really the single family home market started to explode. And then it got exacerbated by COVID. We can get into that a little bit, but the single family home market really exploded. In San Francisco, we don't really have that many single family homes. So, in our market, if you want a backyard, if you want a house, there just aren't that many of them. And there aren't that many big ones of them. So in 2019, it was really a lot of people leaving that condo market, starting to want to get to their next level, their next property, that single family home market. But I'd say even more than that was the segmentation of the city and the gentrification, really. That was really the story for me, 2016 through 2019. It was really a double-edged sword for me because you had a lot of these neighborhoods where I grew up here that were kind of, up and coming neighborhoods where you really wouldn't want to spend too much of your time. And they started getting gentrified, which, cleaning up the neighborhoods, maybe some cooler stores, bars, and restaurants. But also it was hard for me, the double-edged sword, because a lot of the friends I grew up with were kind of priced out of the market here. It just became completely unaffordable, to be honest. I do have strategies and ways, not to scare anybody, to make it more affordable and help you out. But, we really hit a point where, it just became quite a frenzy, quite an unaffordable market. And then, so what I like to do is I call it taking out my scalpel, and I cut open these neighborhoods for clients and find pockets of value. Really a lot of tech millennials, which is what drives our market here. They all want to be on the most walkable street and neighborhood in the city. They want to be next to the Phil's Coffee, across the street from the Whole Foods, next to the yoga studio. So what I try to help people out with is, hey, let's go a mile away from those awesome walkable blocks and you get really more affordable housing. God forbid, I always joke, you have to walk a mile to Whole Foods and not be down the street. Your properties, you can actually afford about, it might be worth $250,000 less, and you have a much better chance of getting into the market there. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think overall, I kind of wanted to just get a picture of what the snapshot of the market looked like prior to COVID, because a big reason why I wanted to bring you in was to sort of discuss what the effect of COVID was on the San Francisco market. So, why don't you just start from the very beginning of just what the experience what the experience was like in March when this stuff really started to seem real, and sort of give me sort of the timeline of how COVID began to affect, the real estate market as a whole and specifically San Francisco.
Yeah, no, that's great. And 2019, like I said, was wild, and right up until February, it was the Wild West out here. The market was so crazy, and then March, it all came to a screeching halt in San Francisco. None of us knew what was going on. We had friends and family that were getting sick, reading articles around the country. It was really scary, honestly. I mean, it was just a scary time, my kind of what I was doing was just educating people and kind of putting on my therapist hat, like which we do as realtors. We're therapists, psychologists, guides, friends, and realtors at the same time, financial advisors, lawyers, whatever you may have. And I really turned into therapist mode. And I was just getting calls from people that had just bought in the last 6 months saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe I bought at the top of the market." And kind of educating them and walking them through that it's okay. This too will pass, and we'll get past this. Just, pay your mortgage, or if you need to get a PPP loan or forbearance, tackle that. Just make sure you can pay your mortgage, stay afloat. I guarantee you it will be fine. It will go up from here in the future. So don't worry about that. But all, kind of like me and you were talking about earlier, we have our pipeline of clients and everyone's at a different stage of it. The people that were writing offers and ready to go were just totally done and just called me and said, "Hey, I need to take a pause here." Everything that was on the market in San Francisco, it was kind of unprecedented on the MLS, which is kind of our realtor database. They clicked hold or pause, on every listing. You could if you wanted to. You were allowed to leave it active if you wanted, but the MLS gave us the ability to pause our listing so that, you weren't just on the market for 4 months during COVID and nothing was happening. So it was an unprecedented time of just, I'd say March, April, and May, total screeching halt. Nothing was happening. All I was doing was fielding phone calls about what's going to happen, where are we, what happens next. And frankly, all of us didn't know, right? I mean, you could pretend to know or talk about what you think is going to happen, but we really didn't know what was going to happen. So up until June, still really scary, not really anything going on. It was kind of the first time in my career where I was just sitting at home and talking on phone calls, but not meeting with clients, not showing new properties, not putting anything new on the market. Open houses stopped, where, really the crux of my business, at least when I started my career, was open houses. No open houses were happening. And, for my team, that was really hard for some of my newer agents, because that's how they meet most of their clients. I'm lucky enough I have a referral base now because I've been doing it for so long and created a good business, but no open houses were happening. So it was just kind of a wild time. And then come July, San Francisco opened again for a minute. And we had this little blip of, some people, there's some really educated, smart investors out there. I mean, I pinch myself on how I meet the smartest people in the room. I really think that I do here in this city, just because of the tech, the finance. I just meet these unbelievably smart people. And come that July and August, I had this little blip of some investors calling me and saying, "Hey, I know it's bad right now, but I think this is going to pass one day. Like, let's go buy some property." So I did have some people where I was taking them out. We had gloves and masks. We had to sign a liability form. Even before we went and toured properties, I had a couple smart investors buying sight unseen. They would go and look at it right before we closed escrow, but they were buying things sight unseen. And, these are totally different segments. These are investors that have the funds to do this. Your first and second time home buyers were still not buying yet. And that was really how it was until, October, November, Christmas time, I would say. And this is all my general overview. Of course, there were one-offs here and there. But overall, it was really what I told people. It was week by week. My market in San Francisco, it's very seasonal. So historically, you have your spring, fall, summer, winter markets, and you can kind of figure out what's going to happen that season and where things are going. This was the first time in my career that every week and really every 2 days, something was different. You had Donald Trump talking about something, you had China talking about something, you had the stock market in the toilet, and then it would come up for one day. So it was wild. I mean, every day, every week was different. I'd never seen anything like where, again, like my seasonality, it's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like predictable, or somewhat predictable. This is the first time where you could call me on a Monday and I tell you something, and then that same client would call me on a Friday and I'd have a totally different pulse on the market. So it was really unique in that sense that it was widely variable from day to day. So it was really interesting and unique. And and I'm not even touching the whole personal and psychological stuff we're all going through. I'm talking about the business sense of it, of course.
Totally. Now, which segments of the market were most affected by COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it was really, really apparent that the condo market took a huge hit in San Francisco. And that's kind of our entry level price point, is the condo market. And it was decimated, I would say. And specifically, we have 10 districts in San Francisco. Districts 8, 9 are really the downtown, south of Market, SoMa districts. And these are where we have our largest buildings. So this is where we have our 200 to 500 unit buildings. You'll have a pool, a gym, a doorman. All these amenities got closed immediately. So, why would you buy a condo in a building that has a gym, a pool, a doorman? You're paying $1,200 a month for HOA dues, and you're not even be able to swim in the pool or use the gym. So that market just honestly went down almost 15 to 25%, like overnight. I mean, if you wanted a SoMa condo, it was ripe for the picking. You could really buy anything you wanted and get better deals than the previous 3-ish years were getting. That was the number one market that was decimated. The second market was still the condo market, but it was those condos in the 10 to 30 unit buildings. It was really a matter of people were really unsure about germs infecting people. They really didn't want to be in elevators with people. They didn't want to have their neighbors close to them. So those segments of the market really took a huge hit. And then the last segment was the condos in the 2 to 4 unit buildings, which are our most valuable condos here in San Francisco. They're typically in the Victorian, Edwardian buildings. Those held their value a little bit more just because you had less neighbors, less points of potential infection for COVID. So, those were the markets that were definitely hit the hardest. And the inverse of that, if you want to know, I don't know if you were going there.
Yeah.
The inverse of that was single family homes exploded in San Francisco. Absolutely exploded in a positive way. The value skyrocketed because my clients, a lot of them were looking at 2 or 3 bedroom condos, 1 or 2 bedroom condos in these buildings. Then all of a sudden they had been stuck in their apartment during COVID, both working from home for 6 to 8 months with no outdoor space and a dog, maybe a baby. And that wasn't feasible anymore. Now, all of a sudden their priorities totally flipped on its head, and they wanted to be in a single family home with a backyard, light, air, no neighbors. Their dog could run outside. Someone could work in the, Zoom room while someone was working in another room in the house. So really, when it was all said and done last year, condos went down anywhere from 6 to 10% in San Francisco, depending on which segment you look at. And single family homes actually went up, which is wild. During a global pandemic, our single family home market went up about 5 to 6%.
Yeah. And, I think across the entire country, there was this sort of epiphany of COVID clarity, right? Where people were beginning to understand what their universe looked like when their 2-bedroom condo was not only the place that they slept, but it was also the school, and it was their office, and it was, all of these things consolidated into one space. And I think, frankly, probably globally, there was probably a recognition that condos were not going to work in some cases. So one of the questions I have, though, is aside from just the condo dip and the single family rise, there's been a lot of talk of tech companies that are leaving San Francisco, people who, their jobs may still be here, but they wanted to perhaps even move to the East Bay where I do my work, to maybe get some more space. Can you speak on that? Have you been seeing any patterns like that with your clients or with your territory?
Yeah, I saw a lot of patterns like that. And, first off, I think the media totally overblew the exit from San Francisco, first and foremost. And I have a ton of articles. You can read some Chronicle ones that talk about the data that was wrong on that everyone was leaving, like the New York Times and Bloomberg said. In my experience, I mean, my experience is the four corners of my desk, I always say, and my, who I'm talking to every day. And the people that I saw leave San Francisco already had one foot out the door. They were basically in that early to mid 30s mode. Maybe they had one baby. Maybe the second was on the way. They're like, hey, honey, should we move to Oakland? Should we move to Marin? Or do we kind of want to stay in the city and, have that like fun nightlife that we used to have pre-COVID? And once COVID hit, it was like the impetus or the acceleration for them to be like, okay, we're leaving now. They're already halfway out the door and deciding whether they wanted to stay in the city for a few more years. And this was the acceleration point for them to say, I'm leaving the city. And I did have a lot of clients leaving, a lot of people and friends leaving. Absolutely. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I had a lot of people leaving, but what the media didn't talk about, in my experience, was that for every one call I had of someone leaving, I would literally get 2 or 3 more calls of people saying, hey, Michael, I'm reading all these reports. This seems like a really good opportunity of maybe I can actually afford in San Francisco now. And I want to come in and actually get into the market. And it was really interesting because, everyone talked about everyone leaving, but no one talked about there's a lot of people coming in too. And obviously it was all exacerbated because the whole city was closed down. So it was very easy to leave. And all my clients would call me, especially my sellers or my people that own property, and say, oh my gosh, Michael, is the city dead? Is it never coming back? Like, is it over? We had a good run. And I would joke with them that, I'll buy all the real estate right now. I obviously can't do that, but I'll buy all the real estate now. And then when the city's back, everyone can buy it from me at higher prices. And sure enough, we're already seeing the city come back in waves. Once indoor dining's back, once your friends are buying tickets to outside lands, once you're going to Bill Graham and seeing Kygo at a show. I mean, once that all stuff starts happening, the city all of a sudden becomes an epicenter of, oh, this is where I want to be again. And what's really interesting, and I've gotten more calls than ever today, and this is not like Oakland's awesome, Marin's awesome. I'm not talking about those markets, but I had some people that called and said, hey, I just bought in the middle of nowhere. I'm absolutely bored. Me and my husband, we're 31. We're going to kill each other. We're like watching tumbleweeds go by our front door. Can we get back into the San Francisco market? And so I'm all of a sudden this last 3 months, 6 months, I'm seeing a lot of that, which is really, really interesting. So I've been seeing a lot of that, and we definitely had a lot of people leave. But what I was telling people too is, I mean, the last trip I took before COVID was to Austin. Phenomenal city. Loved it. Had so much fun. Great city. I'll never say anything down on Austin. They seem to be poaching all of our people, but it's okay. And it was already happening. Like, we were already seeing some people being priced out of the San Francisco and Bay Area market. So they're already leaving for the Austins and the Nashvilles and the, Wyomings or whatever it may be. So I was already seeing that. I think COVID just kind of accelerated that process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I've got a friend who's an agent out in Austin, and, there's a lot that city has to offer. But let me ask you this. What makes San Francisco a market that will forever be an evergreen, beautiful place to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about this with people all the time. And, I went to college in LA. So I was that college kid that was talking about how amazing San Francisco was, and everyone had to tell me to be quiet. They're like, you're in LA now, like, enjoy it. Stop talking about the city. I'm like, I got to get back there. There's no city where, we have a downtown metropolitan right there, a beach a mile away. You can go 20 minutes and be in Sausalito. You can go 45 minutes and be in the best wine in the world. You can go another 2 hours and climb Half Dome. Like, oh, you want to leave on a Thursday afternoon and go skiing at Heavenly and Squaw? Like, yeah, you can be there in a couple hours. I mean, there's no place like San Francisco. Not only that, but the culture, the art, the nightlife, the melting pot, the diversity. It's why I fell in love. I grew up here, so I didn't have a choice. But I fell in love with it, when I came back from LA, like, again, as an adult. It's just, the culture, the art, the nightlife, and just we have so many different types of people here. And it's just, the amount of parks that we have as well. The food, we're constantly number one in Bon Appetit and all of these different periodicals. So there's just nothing like it. And I don't think there ever will be anything like it. There's some that compete, but when it comes to the Austins of the world, again, super great city, not going to say anything bad about it, but you don't have Napa, Yosemite, and Tahoe in your backyard. So I think that's the main difference.
Totally. So walk me through what the market looks like now. I mean, we're starting to see across the country that people are getting their vaccines, the numbers are going down. We're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. So what is the market looking like now, and what is it projecting to look like in the near future?
Yeah. And yeah, in San Francisco. And again, I mean, I think I was talking about during COVID, it hit until about like Christmas. It was those phone calls of doom, gloom, the city will never be back. I can't believe I bought here. It's never coming back. January 15th, like February 1st, maybe, like literally I tell people it was the largest pendulum swing I had ever seen in my career, from December 25th, just to use like a line in the sand, to January 15th. I mean, literally like 21 days, the light at the end of the tunnel, like you just said. I don't know if it's, despite your politics, we didn't have two presidents fighting each other anymore on the news. So like the political climate settled down. All of a sudden, vaccines were getting distributed. The stock market was at all-time highs. Our market in San Francisco is very much dictated. If you want to follow how our market's going to do, it's very much dictated by the tech stock market. So look at your FANG stocks, look at the NASDAQ, look at a lot of the tech-driven portfolios. That's how our market is typically going to look. And I had never seen a larger pendulum swing from doom and gloom to absolute frenzy optimism of, I'm feeling safer. I'm feeling like we have a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm so tired of living in my apartment, but I feel safe enough to like go out and start touring properties. We're in a wild market right now, an absolute wild market. And it's exacerbated by, we have no inventory. There's nothing to choose from on the market. So think simple supply and demand. We have no supply right now. And you had this largest pendulum swing ever from demand. So the demand just hit an all-time high that I've seen in my career. And San Francisco always has low inventory and always has low supply. People always joke like, oh, is there a lot of inventory in San Francisco? Like never. But we had 40% less inventory January 2021 than we did have in January 2020. So couple this insane demand with the lowest inventory we ever had, and it was just a boom. And it's wild right now because what's happening in San Francisco is, my client will like 123 Main Street, I'll run an analysis where I'll say, like you do this, Patrick, we want a comparative market analysis of CMA. And we say, hey, Mr. Buyer and Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, this property, based on all the properties that have sold in this area over the last year, this property is worth anywhere from 1.3 to 1.35, because we're looking at data from COVID times, and the market was way down. So you're looking at this data when the market and values were down, and that property that's worth 1.3 is going for 1.5 because someone has to have it and they're ready to buy, and they don't care if they're overspending because they're so ready to move and they're so ready to get in the market. And honestly, no one spent any money last year, I'm telling people. So you had a lot of people that saved money. If you didn't lose your job, you still got your tech bonus, you still had your salary, and you didn't spend money like going to Europe and going to music festivals. Like you had a pretty good amount of savings, like, hopefully for the people that kept their jobs. So all of these factors just coupled with wildness. And so we're having trouble now where I have to tell clients like, hey, based on the data, it's worth 1.3 during COVID times, but based on this interest level and how many disclosure packages are out and what I think it's going to go for based on the crazy interest, it's going to sell above those values that we had last year. So we really just have this frenzy right now.
Are the overpaying buyers going to hyper accelerate appreciation?
Yes.
Because they're going to become comps, right? Everyone who's overpaying, all of a sudden that 3.2 that was listed at 1.3 is now going for, that sold at 1.6 all cash. That's a comp now.
Absolutely.
Is that going to hyper accelerate? Is it get in while you can?
I don't like to be the pushy realtor that says like, buy now, buy now. My philosophy is if you have the down payment and it's the right time for you and your family, jump in. And you can never go wrong in San Francisco. Every property I've ever bought, every property my family's ever bought, I've bought at the very top of the market, and you're crazy you're buying right now. And then I look back in 36 months and I'm the smartest guy in the room, right? And all of my clients were too. So I preach like dive in when you can. But yes, it is going to hyper accelerate the appreciation of our market. Where I was predicting in like Christmas time of 2020 that we'd have single digit gains. And, I read and listen to people smarter than myself. A lot of us were predicting their 5 to 8% single digit appreciation gains. I think we're blowing that out of the water this year. And I think the sky's the limit. And I don't like the word overpay. I said that. I don't think it exists. I mean, when I wrote an offer the other day, there were 35 offers and we won it by like $3,000. So did we overpay? Well, there's 29 other people that were willing to buy that property. And there's probably 10 of them that were within 20,000 of that property. So that is technically market value now. And, when you look back in 6 months when there's more inventory and maybe that was sold a little bit higher than it should have, maybe. But, I tell people, as long as you're staying in the house for 2 to 3 years, you don't want to buy and then sell in 6 months. You're obviously not going to really make money doing that. As long as you're staying in your primary residence, the price will fix itself and it will go up over time. But yeah, I mean, we're going to set new comps this year. Like you were alluding to earlier, priorities have changed quite a bit. Outdoor space is the number one factor now when I talk to buyers during a buyer meeting. Whereas walkability was number one and maybe like, I don't know, like finishes, countertops. Now it's outdoor space. So priorities have changed. But yeah, I think my earlier predictions of single digit appreciation gains, I might have been underselling it a little bit.
Yeah, no, it seems like the people who were calling you in June and July, who seemed like they were crazy buying sight unseen, are probably laughing all the way to the bank at this point. And it's not even, it's just April as of now.
Yeah, so they really are. And that's why it's really hard. But during down times, you have to have some foresight of, let me jump in and I think things will get better. But you know what? I don't blame people. This was the craziest, most insane thing we ever went through. And I try to tell people, they say, did I miss the boat? No, you didn't miss the boat. We're just getting started here. We just got started in this new world, this new vaccinated world we're in. I think the next 12 to 36 months are going to be dancing in the streets, partying, traveling, getting back to the beach, back to the Bill Graham Auditorium for music shows, whatever it may be. So I think we're just getting started in this market here. So don't feel like you missed the boat. Again, jump in when you can. And I think we have a long runway here.
Great. So let me just have you quickly summarize. So if I'm a buyer and I've always loved San Francisco, it's romantic, it's got great food, I love Bon Appetit, I subscribe to every issue, but I'm not sure if now's the time to buy. I'm on the fence. What would you tell me as the buyer to convince me what my best decision might be in this case? I've already got the down payment. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to buy if you have the down payment and you're ready to go. I always preach to people, buy the largest place you can with like the most bedrooms and the largest square footage and the best location. That way, if knock on wood or something goes nuts and the market does take a dip, or maybe this tech stock market goes down a little bit, so our prices go down a little bit, as long as you can afford to live in your place and pay your mortgage, and again, you bought the biggest space possible, so you're not feeling like cramped and tight in it, like, oh, I really need to upsize immediately, then don't worry about it. It's like a stock, right? You buy the Apple stock and it goes down 10% the next day. You just don't sell it then. You just wait until it goes up again. It's the same thing in real estate. Like your value on paper might have gone down slightly. Properties that I've owned, they've been worth less than when I bought it at one point, and then I just wait and it will be up from where you bought it from. So don't be scared about overpaying or paying at a top of the market time. Just buy a good location, buy square footage. Don't compromise your wish list. Like don't just buy to say you bought and like get in and be like, okay, I got in, but like I hate my place. I don't like the location. It's not big enough. Don't compromise your wish list. You do have to make trade-offs. And I always tell my clients, unless you're a billionaire, you will make trade-offs on your home. You will have to sacrifice something. My home I'm sitting in here doesn't have, it's on a busier street. And you know what? That's okay to me. I sacrificed having a busier street so I could have more square footage. All of us have to make trade-offs unless we're Jeff Bezos. We all have to make trade-offs on our wish list. So make trade-offs, but don't compromise your wish list. And I think San Francisco is just getting started, because the second that people have to go back to work, I mean, imagine that, Patrick, and imagine the Soma market, and imagine the downtown market. So right now, no one wants, the beauty of Soma was, again, the amenities I talked about, but you also walked a block to Uber, to your office. And yeah, you're probably not going to go back 7 days a week now, but based on what I'm reading, your salary will be reflected on how many days you come in, and you will have to come in at least a few days. So imagine once you have to, again, go 3 days a week and walk to Uber, on Market Street, the Soma market should continue to rise, basically. And so I think it's a good time. I think it's a really good time if you like condos, if you like downtown, if you like Soma, what I call New San Francisco, if you like those areas, definitely get into those areas now, because I think that will not be the case come September, October, November. So there are definitely some opportunities.
And last question, if I'm trying to get in, but I'm looking, my number one priority is affordability. Like, I want a piece of San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm not a tech millionaire. What's my best route?
The Bank of Mom and Dad is always open, even on Sundays. No, but it's funny, because a lot of my clients are nervous about talking to their parents, and I always educate people. About 80% of my clients in San Francisco, baby boomers have a lot more money than we do. Beg, borrow, steal, whatever you need to do to get that down payment. So friends and family, talk to the Bank of Mom and Dad. I have a lot of lenders that will do 10% down now. So 20 or 30%, you don't have to do. So imagine, it's a lot of money, but on $1 million place, 100,000, probably scrape that together, 10% down. Or some people having spouses, dual income households is always super helpful as well. So yeah, talk to a good realtor, get those good 10% down lenders that they recommend to you. Talk to your realtor about getting out my scalpel I told you about. Find those pockets of value. Twin Peaks in San Francisco. It's on a giant hill. We have a lot of hills here. No one wants to live on a hill in San Francisco because they can't walk anywhere. So again, you get like pockets of value. So really don't follow the herd is what my brother and I, which had a buyer seminar last week, and really the main point of our buyer seminar, don't follow the herd. Yes, everyone wants a single family home next to Golden Gate Park with a huge yard, whatever it may be, but don't follow the herd. If you're okay with something that is a little bit different than what everyone wants, a little bit different of a neighborhood, that's where I would go. And that's when you're not a tech millionaire, Patrick. You can find pockets of value. Buy the ugliest house in the block. That's another thing about not following the herd. Like, please don't buy the house that has the bright and sparkly Carrara marble, countertops. I promise you, you can put those in about like 2 to 4 days. I can give you my guy. He can put in countertops for you for 5 days, but you want to look at his location, square footage, floor plan, things you can't change. If you buy that house with the dark purple bathroom tile and the really ugly shag carpet, a lot of tech millennials that are really wealthy, they go after the sparkly Carrara marble done houses. So buy the ugliest house in the block, don't follow the herd, and find a pocket of value somewhere in a neighborhood that maybe people don't know about, and you can get a really, really good opportunity.
Michael, where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram, michael.bellings. My business Instagram is San Francisco Homes. Bellings Brothers Real Estate Team on Yelp, on Facebook. Pretty much type in Bellings Brothers Real Estate Team anywhere and you'll find me. But yeah, would love to DM me on Instagram. We have a lot of cool transformations. You'll see, Patrick, from zero to hero on a lot of our listings that we prep and get ready for the market. We have a lot of off-market coming soon listings. So follow San Francisco Homes or michael.bellings, and you can reach out to us there.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for your time. That was super informative for me. I'm on the other side of the Bay Bridge here, so you've been giving me all the insight that I ever could have asked for. So I appreciate the time, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Good to see you.
For sure. Thank you.